Went to go watch 28 Days Later. I do have a review for that. I watched it in the big screen a week or two ago, and that was the first time I ever seen it in a big screen. And I will tell you, I'm not ready for 28 years later because honestly, I forgot just how much of 28 Days Later with Danny Boyle's amazing direction and all of that was just suspense, thrills, and I was not ready. I jumped a lot. Excited for 20 years later on the big screen. We did get to see a scene from the film after the film ended for 28 Days Later, and it was a scene where we see the character of the father and the son finding that dead body that has the words Jimmy like etched on him on his torso, and that pretty much was the scene we saw. So this is going to be mostly talking about that and going more into what exactly Jimmy could be, as well as a recent interview that Danny Boyle had with IGN where they discuss these new infected called Alpha and also Berserker. So get into that right now in 1, 2, 3. So of course, if you don't want spoilers, potential spoilers, my theories may not come true, but what if they do and you got spoiled? That's all I'll say. So some people don't like that, and I like to give a warning about it. So let's get into 28 years later and what exactly could be happening here. Now, in the film, we are going to follow Jamie, who is played by Aaron Taylor Johnson, who is a scavenger and also lives with his son as well as his wife, Isla. Isla, played by Jodie Comer. So it says that Isla is a woman suffering from memory loss who lives with her husband and son in a community on the tidal island of Lindisfarne. And of course, that is the island we've seen so many times. So this island is protected from the mainland because there is a small, like, sliver of land that is there, and then sometimes the tide goes over it, so the infected can't come through. And so that's why they're living here in this community. Now, from what I've been reading and seeing, apparently the whole infection and everything has been contained to only the UK, and Britain has been sort of like forgotten by the world. Now, that is sort of conflicted in a way with 20 weeks later. I don't know how they're going to go around this, but I will definitely talk more about it as I look more into it. But in 28 weeks later at the end, we saw that the infected made it to the Eiffel Tower, so that was in France. So I don't know exactly what happened there, what's going to be the whole thing. Alex Scott and Danny Boyle have said that it sort of is still canon, but it could be just soft canon, but we won't discuss that right now. We're discussing the infected as well as a cult in this movie that I've been reading about. So we do have Aaron Taylor Johnson here, who will be taking his son out to the mainland in order to have a rite of passage of sorts, right? He's going to become a man of sorts, and that's exactly what we see in the scene we see as well. We see him showcasing him the horrors that are out here, the beauty as well of nature, and also the tough decisions you have to do at some point, because Aaron Taylor Johnson's Jamie tells his son, you have to kill this one man who is hanging up because he's just like suffering, or he could end up killing you because he's also infected. And it's a very interesting scene. It is very stylized. If you know Danny Boyle, he has this very stylistic approach to how he does things, from Slumdog Millionaire to 28 Days Later. It's always there. And here in 28 years later, I am happy to tell you it still continues. And we see this happening, right? So one of the interesting things as well as the reading is that there are some new infected here. And I went on this IGN article here from Scott Gluria, and he talked to Danny Boyle, and they talked about the Alpha, the Berserker, and everything here. There have been evolutions of the infected because we didn't want to just stand still with them. This is what Boyle was saying. There has been kind of mutations that have developed, if you liked. You hope that it gives a sense of unease, really, that they could be anywhere because we know they move very fast. And also he says that most of the infected now move fast, apart from these new ones, the slow lows, which of course move very slowly, but they're still dangerous. And we've seen that in the trailer already, the slow lows as Danny Boyle calls them. He says that they are very gross as well, and they're very slow. They hang about low level, he says, so they're called the slow lows. I wouldn't advise messing with them. And I think that's one of the creatures we saw as well in the trailer, which I'll showcase right here. He also talks about Berserker and Alpha, which are seemingly supercharged with strength and also perhaps have a semblance of intelligence. And this is something we've discussed already in the previous videos we've done for 28 years later, that there is probably some more sentient infected out here that know who they are are and what they need to achieve. Just in technical terms, we still wanted to capture them in the brittle, almost unreliable way, because that was what we found worked with the first film. We would use special shutter angles to enhance the reliability. That's very kind of rapid motion, that slightly staccato motion to create a kind of brittleness. We also use this old Panasonic camera called an EVA-1, which allows us to see almost like an infrared look, which is the look we wanted to create for some of the nighttime material. And so with that whole talk about having a berserker and alpha and all of this on Wikipedia, and I know Wikipedia might not be reliable and all that, but I'm just going based off what we're seeing here. This is not me trying to tell you this is the truth and all that. This at the end of the day is just theories. It says that the alpha is being played by Chi Lewis Perry, a physically imposing leader of the infected. So that pretty much tells us that we're going to be seeing some very interesting perspectives going on in 28 years later. Now, let's go back to Jimmy really quick before we dive deeper into what exactly could the storyline be. So Jimmy is being played by Jack O'Connell, who is coming off of Sinners, playing a tremendous antagonist, and now we will see him as yet another antagonist in 20 years later. Sir Jimmy Crystal says a cult leader with a dark past. So we definitely are getting the cult vibes here, and we've already seen it in the trailer as well. There's something more to the infected, right? Some people see it as a sort of dawn of a new age of sorts, maybe, and maybe as the next step into evolution. We've seen that trope in a lot of storylines before, and I could definitely see that coming back up again. Maybe they see a merger with the infected needs to happen, right? So what do we know about 28 years later? So the premise reads, 28 years after the rage virus escaped a medical research laboratory, survivors have found ways to exist amidst the infected. One group lives on a small island connected to the mainland by a single heavily defended causeway. When a father and his son leave the island on the mission into the dark heart of the mainland, they discover the secrets, wonders, and horrors of the outside world. So I think we're going to have different storylines that are going to eventually collide together. I think we will see Jamie, who is the father, and his son venture out into the mainland and discover that shit is a lot worse than they expected. I think we also have the whole story with Isla, who is the wife of Jamie, and her son at an eventual point have to venture out themselves, which I'm curious about what that would be, because we do see several shots in the trailer where it's Jamie and Spike together, but then we see only Isla and Spike, and we don't see Jamie. And I think that we will eventually see what happens here is that maybe Isla would get infected. And I've gone on this theory before because Ralph Fiennes, it talks about him playing a doctor and sort of a child trying to come to him to help his mother. And so what I think we're seeing here is that Spike learns from his father how to care for his mother throughout the mainland. And do we see Jamie, the father, Aaron Taylor Johnson, die? I think that's a potential possibility that we see maybe in the first half, and then Spike has to take what he's learned from his father in order to now help his mother, Isla. I believe that the infected could potentially come and ravage and we've seen that in the trailer already, the Alpha, who I think is going to be the one that leads the charge into this island, is going to potentially maybe take over this island. And now Spike and his mother have to venture out to find Dr. Kelson, who is played by Ralph Fiennes, in order to sort of find a way for a cure for their mother, as well as the future of civilizations, because I think that the Bone Temple is very crucial in finding that cure. And I think that's what we're potentially seeing here. Now we have a cult leader played by Jack O'Connell called Sir Jimmy Crystal, who seems to want to keep up the infected, I believe, because in the teaser that we saw at the end of 28 Days Later, we see that they have these like infected hanging upside down with blood dripping down on them, in maybe an effort to use it to collect that blood in order to infect more and have the rage virus continue. Maybe this is a cult that just wants chaos, that doesn't want this virus to be contained, and they continue to sort of stoke the flames in order to continue that. And Alex Garland talks about that he sort of was inspired by Brexit in order to write this film. And I think that that could possibly be how he viewed Brexit on his own. Maybe he viewed it as some people were trying to stoke, I would say, fear in order to create this chaos and eventually isolate themselves from the rest of the world. And in this film, Britain is isolated from the rest of the world, according to much of what I've read. So that's why I don't know how they're going to play 28 weeks later into the larger theme, but I'll talk more about that in my next theory video. This is more talking about the Alpha as well as the cult leader, Jimmy. So I do believe that this film will be split into two parts, one with Spike and his father, Jamie, venturing out into the world, finding out about the Alpha and these more sentient infected, and then eventually overriding the little crossway that they have, making it onto the island, causing havoc and chaos, and then we have to see maybe Jamie die, the father. Eventually, we might see Spike and his mother Isla come out to the mainland to find Dr. Kelson, who might know just how to treat all of this in the Bone Temple. And I think that's where the film could potentially end. So we have Spike in a coming of age type film, in a very dark one, of course, compared to some of the other more popular ones, trying to come to terms with what's going on out here. We have the Alpha, who is the new leader for the infected out here, and is leading a charge in order for the infected to continue to thrive and live, right? And we have Sir Jimmy Crystal, who wants to sort of aid this as well to happen, because maybe his cult is a cult that just wants chaos for chaos sake. They don't like how the world used to be, and they think this is how it should be run now. And I think that we see Spike and his mother Isla trying to escape all of this and trying to find a cure maybe for Isla before she turns or something. And she is pregnant, of course, as we've seen before. So that could potentially be a thing that really drives Spike to save his mother as well. And Dr. Kelson, I believe Raph finds we probably won't see him till the end of the film, more than likely, but probably have a bigger role in the Bone Temple. So those are my thoughts, my theories on what potentially could be happening here in 28 years later. I do have another theory video I want to make, but this was more talking about the Alpha as well as the cult leader aspect of it all and what potentially could be happening. So you let me know your thoughts on what exactly is the thing that you think could happen in 20 years later. Where do you see this film going? We do have the Bone Temple coming out in less than a year from this movie, so I think that they definitely are going to end it on a huge cliffhanger, and I could potentially just seeing them arriving to the Bone Temple and that's where it ends. So we've seen that shot in the trailer already, so that could potentially be the final shot of the film, but we'll see. As always, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell. Let's talk theories down below. I'll talk more about it next week in another video, so stay tuned for that. Check out our video on the Black Phone 2, another horror movie we're super excited for, and make sure you hit that subscribe button and notification bell. As always, I'll see all of you next time. Let's get to 50,000 subscribers this summer. Stay safe, stay positive.